Hello again, friends. It's a Locked on Minnesota and Locked on Twins postcast after your Minnesota Twins fall 6-4 in Game 1 of the ALDS. I'm your host, Brandon Warren. I am joined by the proprietor of Zone Coverage, Tom Schreier. You can follow him on Twitter at tschreier3. Mr. Schreier, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. Other than that, I had to drive from Hugo back home here to Minneapolis, and it was a little longer than I thought. I left trying to think before the 8th inning. It's not like there was a lot of traffic. I was just very far away from home. So watched a lot of this on my phone, and it's very funny to have like 5 or 6 adults standing around a table at a kid's birthday party watching a phone. But I'll say this, like there are a lot of people there like, I haven't watched a lot of the Twins this year and stuff like that. And it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that like if you win a playoff series for the first time since 2002, playoff game since 04, as everyone kind of is citing here, you do get you make fans, you know what I mean? Like even casual people who maybe are more Vikings fans and more Wolves fans or something like that are kind of locked in. So yeah, it was kind of funny to watch a baseball game off my phone with like 5 adult men.
Yeah. So today's postcast is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Tom, Twins fall 6-4. They make it interesting for a little while there. Really, that run that the Astros pushed across in the 7th made the 9th feel like it was going to be pretty tough against Brantley. I want to talk first about, though, the starting pitcher decision that was made to go with Bailey Ober. And I think a lot of it circled back on the fact that Joe Ryan had a spell, and again, he was battling an injury where he really gave up a lot of home runs. So the thought was, hey, maybe don't pitch him in a ballpark where they hit a lot of home runs. It reminded me a little bit of the Jake Odorizzi, Randy Dobnak switcheroo between New York and Minnesota back in 2019, although not quite to the same level. But Bailey Ober, supposedly less likely to give up homers. Guess what he does on the first
hit
of the game? Tom, how did you feel? Sometimes you have this omen with the first inning, but how about the first pitch? Like, come on, man.
No, it was funny. So again, I kind of referenced I was at a personal function here, my friend's kid's birthday party, and so I'm driving up. I'm listening on the air. Obviously, I mean, baseball is one of the best sports to listen, but like, it's so jarring. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of sitting there being like, hey, I'm kind of getting to the game and trying to get the feel. What's it like at the park? You know, stuff like that. And it's, you know what I mean? It's that sudden, it sets a tone. And I think here's the thing. There's a little bit, the Astros just have this advantage of you can start Verlander. That's the advantage you get when you're not a wild card team. We can get into the Ober decision. I think it's probably it's in part maybe homer prone, right? With Joe Ryan, although we know that was groin injury related, and that maybe his season would look a little differently if after the Atlanta game he would have just been like, "Hey, I'm injured." But I'm an Ober guy in the sense that great developmental success story. I think he has the poise to pitch in playoff games. He's a great 4th starter. Like that is a mismatch, no matter how the fact that Verlander is like 40 or whatever and dotting 95 around the strike zone is unbelievable. I mean, that guy's he's such an unbelievable pitcher. But I think as much as the Astros don't have much to prove here, right, given their track record of success, like this is a Twins team that is riding momentum. Like the only advantage you have in playing those wild card games, that they were at home, that you picked, that there's the euphoria with this game, but like in that first game and kind of what he inspires in people. And then that you have this kind of tense second game that you pull off, right? And I think the Astros have been here before. Altuve won't have trouble swinging at the first pitch. They should be aggressive. They're at home. They want to get the fans behind them. So it's really tough on the first pitch, not just only for the pitching matchup and for Bailey Ober himself, but the fact that you're out there, you're out in Houston, all of a sudden the fans are going crazy. And for a while there, it looked like it could be a blowout.
Jeff Passan tweeted as the game ended, that's 12 straight wins for the Astros in home divisional series games. So it is a little derivative of a stat. But the Twins knew that they were coming into basically a hornet's nest, if you will, and I think they handled that initial stung back and showed some moxie. They had some plate appearances I really didn't like. There were a few calls I didn't like, especially that called strike 3 to Jorge Polanco that hugged the inside of, let's just say, the chalk. And but I mean, you come in knowing it's going to be difficult against the Astros at home, no matter what. You still hope you can steal one. You got your best guy going before the series comes back to Minnesota. And we'll get into that in a bit because it's going to be a lefty-righty matchup, and it's not going to be as much of an upper hand for one side or the other. But Twins 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position. The runners in scoring position statistic cuts two ways. You have a lot of opportunities, which means you had guys on. There'll be games where you don't score any runs and you're 0 for 12, and there'll be games where you'll score no runs and you're 0 for 4. Early in the game, Justin Verlander gave them a shot. He did not quite have his A+ stuff. And I think he told Tom Verducci that when he came out, it was just like once he got that feel for that curveball and could put it where he wanted it to, at that point, it was just, let's play, let's go. And so, I don't know. I mean, again, I came into this game not feeling really good about it, and the Twins lost.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean I'm any more likely or less likely to freak out or see fans freak out? That's what I'm trying to kind of figure out here. What is your read kind of on, like, do you see Twins fans understanding that this was going to be a difficult game no matter what, or are they still kind of, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I don't think winning a wild card series, as much as it literally is like historic, exercises all the demons. I think it satisfies a lot of that. I actually really felt that this is going back to the wild card series, but like when Royce Lewis, most of the players, and it's probably fine, but they walk out of the dugout when they're introduced and just go kind of like high five with their teammates and kind of go stand in line. And Royce Lewis, and it's just very genuine. I asked him after the game if he thought about it. He said he didn't. He just turned around and amped up the crowd, right? Threw his hands up. And I think that and the 2 home runs he hit go a long way to going, hey, just trust me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm good. And even with the hamstring issue, and you see it when he's trying to leg out, Sengo or whatever, he's not full Royce Lewis here, but like he is full Royce Lewis in the sense that he can bat. He has bat to ball skills and he has the power still. So I think this team is different. I think you could talk to almost anyone in the locker room and they would say it would be a disappointment if they just snapped the winning streak and didn't get to the next round. I think there's guys there that believe this is a winner. I think the thing is, I understand the reaction people have here because this actually feels like a 5-0 game, even though you have the Polanco home run, right? Even though Lewis actually obviously factors in with the home run. It somehow felt like a bigger deficit than 6-4. And I think you mentioned the insurance run probably does some of that. Mm-hmm. But the way I look at it, you're going Lopez Gray, and that Gray start is here. They have Valdez. I don't know who the game 3 starter is. I think the upside is the Twins will get their 2 best pitchers here.
I think Christian Javier is expected to start that game.
Yeah, and then you probably go back to Verlander, Framber, right? So it's going to be pretty tough. But I think I'm of 2 minds here. If they never scored in this game, or they like kind of scratched across a runner, right? I'd go. The winning formula isn't what happened in the wild card. Like there's a lot of, first of all, Royce Lewis did all the scoring in the first game, and Pablo looked in command, right? But like, I think he probably wanted to get out of the inning, and I don't know if you can bank on him doing literally the exact same thing or surpassing that, right, against the Astros.
Tougher team for sure.
Yeah, and I just think I think Lopez is an unbelievable pitcher. I think I probably said this at one point. I know I wrote it. That trade was never as bad as people thought. If you just looked a little bit into the data, if you look at FIP and WHIP and just in some basic kind of underlying metrics, they tell you like Lopez is good. They needed pitching. Everyone loves a rise. You had someone to fill in for him because of Julian. And so like, I think as much as I'm a fan of Pablo Lopez and think he's really good, like I don't 100%. I think he'll give you a good start. I don't know if it'll be the same. And I looked
Yep.
at that Sonny Gray game in that second one, and I was like, that is a veteran starter who has stuff, who keeps guys guessing and off balance. And yet he seemed like he was not a high wire act for a while there. You know what I mean? Like it always felt like on the vert. And that, to be fair, that is kind of veteran moxie. It's, I know there's a guy on third. I know I got to get 2 outs here. I'll be fine. You know what I mean? And I think that comes with being Sonny Gray's age, experience, just his raw stuff and how good he is. And so like, there's some of that, but it's just like the Twins formula. I was encouraged to see those 4 runs, even though it wasn't enough. And I was discouraged to see 3 runs because I think it's a run per inning, right? With Over, and I think it's a run per inning, right? Because it was 3 innings from Over, 3 runs, and then two innings, 2 runs for Maeda. Like I know they're trying to Frankenstein a pitcher together there, you know what I mean, with to take on Verlander, but like I just that is discouraging. But I think it's actually like what it tells me is they actually have legit pitching depth. The Twins do. And they just need to, they actually, I think they did a lot of good things against Verlander, like just kind of wore him out in those first 2 innings, right? Do you want to ground into double plays? No, but like run up the pitch count, get to a point where the Houston dugout goes, we might have to remove him. And they did, you know what I mean? And that's where kind of the dam broke. And so like, I think there were actually a lot of positives there. And I think if you take away just that it's a loss, that you don't really want to give up 6 runs in that first game, just how it started, you know what I mean? We started with the first pitch, right? And there was a lot that happened afterwards. It wasn't a 1-0 game, but we did that because that actually set the tone. And that was, hey guys, I actually thought Toronto was a really good team. I thought that was a really like fun series and fun matchup, but like Houston's another level. I don't think it's quite the Yankees. There's something about the Yankees pedigree being in New York, that stadium, but Houston is as close as you'll get in my mind in the AL. And I think this is another kind of dragon to slay, if you will, right? The first one was kind of the history, right? And I know all these players say, well, we weren't around for this. I know like Falvey and Levine and Rocco would be like, I mean, how much of this can you blame on us? We weren't there in like 06 or whatever, you know what I mean? But like, it does hang over them. It's the opposite of Houston. I think there's people in Houston who go, we're going to a game to go see them win it. You know what I mean? Like the Astros will win this series. I think there's a lot of confidence on that side. And I think the first thing that they did was kind of back up that confidence. And the first thing the Twins have to do, and this is probably a lot on Lopez, but it's also if you're Julian, if you're Polanco, if you're certainly Royce Lewis, like instill doubt in them, right? You know what I mean? Make them think twice about this certainty that look at how many times we've been to the ALCS. Look at how many times we won the World Series recently. Even I think they believe really in their process, right? Because I think the Houston side, I mean, it's very analytically based. It's very much like they're willing to move on from Correa because they got a guy behind him. You know what I mean? Like it's a little, it's kind of probably some tough love there and stuff. But like, if you're the Twins, that's kind of the next step. For here, it was don't get blown out 6-0 in the first game. They did not. It felt worse than 6-4, but like at least you kind of got some offense going. The next step is instill some doubt in Houston because my guess is the players and fans, they believe that this is just one step on their way to can we win another World Series?
Yeah, and I think the Twins made a counter strike with that 4 spot against Hector Neris. We'll talk about that in just a second, though. We got to talk about our friends over at FanDuel. The folks over at FanDuel are excited for us to snap into the postseason, the NFL season. And it's FanDuel, the number one sports book in America. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's place a bet, not win, place. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. There's so many different sports and all kinds of stuff. So whatever's up your alley, you can do. And the app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options. There's spreads, player props, overs, unders, anything you can imagine under the sun. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL and MLB, NFL season, MLB postseason. But FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. All right, so let's bring this full circle here. Twins 4 spot, do all of their scoring in the 7th. I think that was the counterpunch, the counteroffensive that I think makes it go from abject despair and what could possibly go well in this series, to there was at least a brief moment of doubt in that fan base, or that stadium of fans, where they were silenced a little bit, where they're showing pictures of Royce's parents, and the Twins have closed it to within a run. I think that counterpunch coming when it did should help the Twins feel, and their fans feel, a little more confident going into the next one. But yeah, couple things here. Justin Verlander comes out. He's thrown 93 pitches, and they say, "All right, buddy, you're done." Then the Paddock goes 1-2-3, and Neris comes out, hits Wallner. You got a Jeffers single, strikeout. Then Polanco with just a bomb to right. Royce Lewis follows with one to the other direction, and then Kepler doubles. At that point, I think it was still kind of like, they're going to be okay. But I do kind of wonder if there was any second guessing taking Verlander out there. Again, 93 pitches. You're not going to push him as hard and all that fun stuff. But at the same time, too, like, the Twins are not usually on the side of, all right, pitcher gets taken out and the reliever gets blown up. Usually the Twins are the pitching side in that equation. It was at least, it made the game palpable from the Minnesota side, like it wasn't just a complete laugher.
Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, like, if you've tracked the Twins at all in the regular season, I think the conclusion is Rocco didn't trust, like, Bundy and Archer and these guys because they were kind of on their last legs. You know what I mean? And, like,
Yep.
When you filled out a staff, and, I kind of wrote about this, like, I understand why we think of the playoff curse, right? The streak as a curse. And there were some weird things that happened during it, but, like, also it's just weird to lose that many games. But, like, a lot of it is like Falvey Levine went out and got pitching. And I know that's like simple, and then got a shortstop, right? But if you look at it, like, Guzman left in 2004, and that was the last time they won a playoff series, right? And, like, the other thing is, I think you do want to see a home ground pitching. Now, I would say Ober success, even though Varland's not starting, like, the fact that you can have a guy like that, where they drafted him, success. They've also had some on the hitting side. You go to Ed Julian and stuff like that. But in Cleveland, they traded for pitching. You know what I mean? And maybe this is the first phase. Maybe the second phase is more homegrown. But, like, you have to take these risks. The Graterols, the Arise, the Nelson Cruz was a very popular player when they traded him. You know what I mean? And I think what it did is enable Rocco to trust his guys. You know what I mean? And I don't blame him for the Ober Maeda thing. I actually think that's a smart way to use two starters. And I still think of Maeda starter, even though he is coming out of the bullpen, right? And he has a history of doing that in the Dodgers. But I kind of think of Paddock that same way. To some extent, I even kind of think of Louis Varland like that too. So, like, I think they, he can trust these guys a little bit more. And I think, here's the thing. There is a way to justify what the Blue Jays did in that second wildcard game. I don't think it was the right move. I think baseball is feel in addition to the underlying numbers. And I understand the strategy of righty lefty and essentially messing with the Twins lineup and then turning around and throwing the best righty relievers at them. But I think the Verlander one is so much more justified. You know what I mean? Like Barrios was humming, and actually in that second game, it felt like the Twins just reverted back to the old Twins, where it's like, well, here's an old friend mowing them down, and it's quiet again, and everyone's tense, and everyone's worried about the Twins again. It's like you didn't even get like a full 24 hours, to like enjoy it or whatever. But I think this felt more like, hey, did you lose me there for a second?
No, I have you.
Okay, gotcha. They're being responsible with a pitcher Verlander's age, knowing he's got to go back and take game 4 if they get there.
Yep.
And I think if you're Houston, you have to trust the bullpen. You know what I mean? Like, they have capable guys there. Having said that, I mean, huge momentum swing there where, like, you think how this goes, like, Wallner gets hit by a pitch, which I just call a Wallner walk. You know what I mean? Like, that guy kind of crowds the plate, and he's very familiar. And obviously, like, everyone's thankful that he is, like, what Rocco said, his bones are made of cement or whatever. But hit by pitch, Jeffers does his thing. I've been impressed with Jeffers all year. Castro strikes out looking. I think once you have Julian strike out, you know what I mean? That's one of the things your eyes kind of bulge when that happens, right? Because he's such a disciplined hitter. I think he has been as disciplined in the postseason as he's been in the regular season. I think that is by far the strength of his game, right? I know he has some power. I know he's got a little better defensively, but I think like that's his superpower is controlling the zone, and like to see him strike out, you think this, the early stuff's a waste. And I think for Polanco to do this, also like think about it. This is a guy, and Kepler's the same way. They've been in the organization since 2009. You know what I mean? Like as 16-year-olds, like they have worked to get to this point. So like, it's just fun to see a guy that, and then for Lewis to, just tack on. I mean, you could see it spiraling. And I think the unfortunate thing with the Kirilloff one is like, I think Kirilloff has been like Julian, actually, in that they're both obviously very disciplined hitters. Kirilloff obviously has worked on that swing since he was a kid. But I think it seemed like he had something going, right? That he was controlling the strike zone. I think he's done this. He did this in the Toronto series too. Like he's been very disciplined with 2 strikes. And I just, at some point, maybe that's just a nasty pitch. You know what I mean? I probably have to see it again, but like, it sucks because like it looks terrible. You know what I mean? When you're just watching it, you're like, how does the guy swing at it when it ends up down there? But that was probably the moment, because it feels like if you don't fully kind of capture the moment and take advantage of it, like you are still in Houston, right? You're still playing an advanced team. This is not, Houston will not spiral for very long because of their track record for success. So I think that happens. And I think it's one of those things that goes back to like, hey, everyone chill out just for a second. Like ultimately, if you get a good start from Lopez and some semblance of offense, it's a winnable game. And all of a sudden we're thinking very differently about this series as it comes back to Minneapolis.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely agree with that. Before we bring things to a wrap with a quick look at game 2, I do want to ask you, so Twins go Ober, Maeda, Paddock, Thielbar, Pagan. Is there anything you would have done differently pitching-wise? The one that I come back to that people were like, well, Thielbar, because, Jordan hits lefties so well, but he hits righties well. Like, you have to throw somebody. And if you look at Thielbar for the year, now, again, I know he missed the bulk of the season, but lefties were 6 for 47 against him with 14 strikeouts, no walks. And all 7 of the home runs he allowed this season were to right-handed hitters. So he hadn't allowed a home run to a lefty all season. Everybody gets tied up in one split or another, but you have to realize that if 2 guys with really good splits go against each other, one person with good splits is going to lose. And so that was what happened here. I did see someone say, well, why not go with one of your best guys? Go get Brock Stewart for that spot. And I wouldn't have hated that. But at the same time, too, Thielbar's numbers matter. So I don't think I would have done anything differently with the starter. I still think I would have gone with Bailey Ober. I had no problem with Kenta coming out next. And then Paddock, Thielbar, Pagan. To me, that was pretty much how to manage a game where you never felt super in it, even though by runs you were within a run and then 2 runs at the end.
Yeah, I mean, first, to lead into Thielbar here, I think the Paddock usage is really good. I kind of was curious what his bullpen role would be. Again, it goes back to, I guess you threw 3 starters at him, right? Because you can do that in the playoffs. And then, but like, it is impressive that Paddock, I understand, again, this goes back to like, what a funny trade. Like, I think we'll be talking about that for the next like 2 or 3 years, because
yeah, for sure.
Pagan looked bad, and like, what's his name started out really well with the A's this year. And I mean, just like the fact that it involved Taylor, all this stuff, like, I think this is another guy who's kind of making a little money for himself or whatever, is like kind of paying off his contract, I guess, in the playoffs. Like, Paddock has a really interesting role, and I think he's been used well. I don't have any issue with Thielbar. Here's the thing. I don't think any moment's too big for Brock Stewart. And I think it's the same reason as Thielbar. I think when you are 30 plus and like you got to do it, because like Stewart's been through injury stuff. Thielbar has, like, they're just not. Thielbar's career is incredible. The fact that Milwaukee kind of got rid of him. He came from the old Saints, the Indie Ball Saints, signed off that by the Twins. then is gone for like 5 years and
Right.
reappears. And I mean, I think he'd say that too. Like it's just incredible. But I don't think I think that guy just, instead of thinking like, oh, I'm going to mess up in a big moment, he's just going like, man, I got to do this now, And I think that sense of urgency is good to have in a player. And I think Thielbar's capable. And I think it's an unfortunate result. I don't think there's anything wrong with going with Brock Stewart. I guess if it's beyond the righty lefty part, which is important, if you're just kind of looking at mentality of the player, like I think Brock Stewart's gonna be fine. Brock Stewart like has not pitched very recently, right? At the very least, Thielbar is kind of like, I understand why you'd marginally trust him more. And yeah, I don't think that. Here's the thing: I don't think it's that big of an issue because you actually should be able to overcome a 2-run deficit at that point. You know what I mean? Like, and I think as much as you saw 4 runs from this team, it kind of it literally happened in 2 separate at bats, functionally back-to-back at bats. Like, they need to generate. I understand Houston's pitching is good. They need to generate more offense, and so I just don't think it's a devastating mistake if that game comes unwound. It is literally 1 run, and given how talented I guess the lineup is or supposed to be, like the Twins should be able to produce that run. So I don't hate it. I could see Brock Stewart there. I will say this, shout out to Emilio Pagan. Like, imagine telling people like, you know what I mean, last year that he'd be in that spot. And I think not
with the Twins, I would say. They would say with the Rays or something.
And to be fair, even like Kepler having that double, right? You know what I mean? And like putting it in position where if Kirilloff lays off that pitch, maybe, you get multiple runners on and you can get something going, or Kirilloff, if he's able to rope one of those, like you score him. So this is like, it's very funny to think like where the Twins were at the deadline, you know what I mean? And we're like, they need another reliever and I actually think it's perfectly fair to go, that was a weird deadline, like the Dylan Floro thing didn't work out. Unfortunately, actually, like Lopez didn't work out. That just, that whole thing was kind of a mess. And then but the bullpen actually rounded out. Like the fact that you have this kind of depth where I don't think ideally they would like to start Ober against Verlander. I think that's pretty straightforward. But
it's not quite Vance Worley in 2013, but it's still at a disadvantage.
Or Brian Dunsing, or God bless Brian Dunsing, but like Dunsing or Randy Dominic. These are players everyone here loves, but like. Ober is a different level, but it's like you can put a patchwork group of pitchers there. It did not work perfectly. I think like you want Ober and Maeda to give up fewer than 5 runs, but like in the past, and even the way it looked coming off a 15-2 loss to Baltimore, right, going into the All-Star break, like. And that was not far removed from like the Atlanta series. That was a disaster. Like you're at that point, you're in the middle of the Joe Ryan kind of like his swoon and stuff. Like, I think it's worth thinking about that for a second, especially as we get into the series. Cause it is, here's the thing. It's disappointing if this team loses to Houston because they can beat them. You know what I mean? Like that's the ultimate, and I'm not saying they will. And Houston has an advantage in that, how much they've had success in the playoffs, but like, man, if I think they put something together. The Twins are both very funny, like kind of America's team, because I think everyone outside of Houston kind of hates the Astros. And I think people can get on board with the Twins given it's like the Twins are a very likable team, like as a brand, but also the players and stuff. So I think if your team's not in it, I think you get on board with the Twins. And like if you're that team, you have to have these little engine that could games. And it was almost that, you know what I mean? Where it's Ober and Verlander, you got to figure out how to do it. That narrative should flip immediately, where it's like if you steal the one with Lopez, you have Gray going at home, and you can completely change the dynamic of that. And so you have to move on from being kind of the little engine that could to like a legitimate locomotive. And I think we won't know about that until we see the result tomorrow.
So they'll get Framber Valdez in the second game, and we've seen Framber a fair amount here. 29-year-old lefty, big ground ball stuff. Good pitcher. Did not do too poorly this year, and it's going to be a challenge. He's again grounders. If you pound it into the ground, double plays, that sort of thing, that could be frustrating. But what we will see almost certainly is going to be a Rocco special with Donovan Solano batting leadoff or Kyle Farmer batting fifth. And then things will change as Dusty goes to the bullpen without the benefit of a lefty because he doesn't have any lefties in the bullpen. So it will be definitely a line shift kind of game, a hockey style game where line one plays until Framber comes out. If the Twins can knock him around, all the better. But it's going to be a tough one. What are you expecting in game two? Because this is do or die. I mean, yes, you can come back 2-0. It's not impossible. It's happened. It happens actually probably fairly frequently if we were to look at it statistically compared to what you'd expect. However, 2-0 is daunting. All you need is one small thing to go wrong in a game at home, and it's over. What are you looking for on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, obviously super important, and they'd want Lopez going here, right? So you have the right guy in the right spot, and that's a good place to begin. As you said, I don't think like 2-0 is over. It just you just give yourself no margin for error. And I think instead of playing that game, I think it's a lot of like, I think of Lopez early in the season. This still happened a little bit. You know, he kind of got babbipped, right? You know what I mean? We'd be like, he was doing fine, wasn't he, until the fifth inning? You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, like the ball just kind of squirreled its way into the outfield. And I think there's no way, obviously, to control perfectly where you're going to hit the ball. But I think it's more like they're going to have to, this kind of wonky lineup for the Twins is going to have to generate opportunities, because the only way to BABIP a pitcher, the only way to create luck for yourself is just creating good contact. I mean, I think it was Castro had like the ball came off at like 102.9 miles per hour, right? And like late in the game. And I think like it was just snared by the second baseman, and like that'll happen. But I think especially against a guy like this, it's like, yeah, you're certainly, this team is susceptible to double plays. They were in this game specifically. They were at times in the regular season. The flip side of that is like, I think Solano will give you a good at bat. Like Kyle Farmer has been like a really fascinating player to me, because that felt like a low wattage move, and actually Solano did too. But like Farmer is not. I think Solano's turned out to be a better player, right? And I think Castro's been like a better story. Like it's hard not to like a guy who hustles and plays like Willie Castro, but Farmer is a professional hitter and a veteran. Like, I think everything he's done so far is calculated. Him going out and saying like, hey, we're going to take this series. I think the way he approaches at bats and even just how he is defensively, like, I think you have guys who will take professional at bats. And I think my hope is, as they get into late innings, and obviously kind of depends on how Houston deploys their bullpen, but hopefully you have Julian and Kirilloff and obviously Lewis and some of these guys like in high leverage spots, because those are the guys who are going to work counts and like assure that they will get their barrel on to the extent they can. And like, this game is going to be like pulling teeth, I think. You know what I mean? There was like the first one wasn't necessarily exciting, but there were like 10 runs scored, you know what I mean? And there were like kind of momentum swings. I think this is going to be kind of a tug of war, you know what I mean? And it's kind of whichever team slips is going to go home. And I think it'll feel actually a lot like those Toronto games. This first one felt like an outlier. I think this is going to feel like those first two Toronto games were like, as much as it's funny, that first one actually felt steady throughout it. The second one, you're sitting there going, man, like Sonny's one bad pitch away from this falling apart. And I think that's how it's going to be. So look, they've won games like this before. I do think the veterans in the clubhouse matter. And I think the fact that the mentality of the young players, you know, I still think of Kirilloff as a relatively young player, how he approaches at bats, how Julian does. The fact that Royce Lewis, I think, is just convinced he's going to do something good at any good point. You know, I think that is going to be crucial in this game, because I think otherwise you can wear yourself out in a game like this, because I think it's something like a 2-1, you know what I mean? Kind of a tense. I mean, this is what playoff baseball is about, right? That it's going to be tense throughout, and that, you know, I think both clubs, win or lose, will probably go back to the dugout kind of exhausted mentally from how this game will go.
Well, that's all you ask for as a fan. Well, time to regroup. Got game 2 on Sunday. We'll see what the Twins have, what it'll look like as they come back home for early this week for game 3 at Target Field. But he's Tom Schreier. I'm Brandon Moore. This has been Locked on Minnesota and the Twins Postcast. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you after game 2.